nami nitaitika, nami nitakuonyesha mambo makuu makubwa usiyoyajua. Niite nami nitaitika, nami nitakuonyesha mambo makuu makubwa usiyoyajua. Niite nami nitaitika, nami nitakuonyesha mambo makuu makubwa usiyoyajua. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Watafuteni watu wote kulingana matendo yao, wapate kumjua yeye Bwana na kumwita yeye. Watafuteni watu wote kulingana matendo yao, wapate kumjua yeye Bwana na kumwita yeye. Watafuteni watu wote kulingana matendo yao, wapate kumjua yeye Bwana na kumwita yeye. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Mwimbieni Bwana, mwimbieni kwa zaburi, tafakarini pendo na ajabu zake. Kama unadanganya, kama wasingizia, kama wachukiana, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Kama unadanganya, kama wasingizia, kama wachukiana, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Kama unadanganya, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waushanye upendo theluji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waushanye upendo theluji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. I know the Lord has been taking good care of you in spite of this forced lockdown that is keeping us away from each other. I pray that you are well. I pray that you will keep your spirits high and that the Lord will continue to bless you. Before we listen to two songs, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you to our virtual worship service. This is United Metro District, comprising United Central and the Mountain Experience, worshiping from here at United Central. So I welcome each and every one of you, our children, young ladies, young men, the families, the parents, and all of you, our visitors, our friends who are watching from all over the world. Please sit pretty and enjoy our services. May the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord be good to you. In Jesus' name, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we have just come to worship you. How we pray that our worship today will be acceptable in your eyes. Fill us with your Holy Spirit. Help us, Lord, to enjoy these services. Not only enjoy, but to learn something. You are here to feed us. You are here to nurture us. You are here to prepare us for the soon coming kingdom. In spite of what is happening in the world, we can still say you have been good to us. Help us to count our blessings. Help us to count them one by one. And as we count them, Lord, help us to be grateful and thankful for that which you have done. As we begin our worship services, we invite the holy angels to be here, be with our equipment, be with our internet. And Lord, we pray that we will not have no disruptions today. And the Lord, those who are sitting home will not be disrupted too, so that we all can be blessed. Bless us, Lord, to this end. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.
Aliyemwezesha
Once again, I'm here. Make an announcement before the program continues. And I want to pray that you listen to me. The Bible says in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the earth. Ellen White, in her book, Counsels to the Church, page 69 and 70, she says this: heavenly angels have long been waiting for human agents, the members of the church, to cooperate with them in the great work to be done. They are waiting for you. So vast is the field, so comprehensive the design, that every sanctified heart will be pressed into service as an instrument of divine power. I want you to listen to that statement. The angels are waiting for you. Then she says, so vast is the field, so comprehensive the design, that every sanctified heart will be pressed into service as an instrument of divine power. And she says in page 70, if Christians were to act in concert, moving forward as one, under the direction of one power, for the accomplishment of one purpose, they will move the world. Those who have spiritual oversight of the church should devise ways, that is Ellen White counseling. Those who have spiritual oversight of the church should devise ways and means by which an opportunity may be given to every member of the church to act some part in God's work. This has not always been done in the past for various reasons. Plans have not been fully carried out whereby the talent of all might be employed in active service. There are but few who realize how much they have been lost because of this. Friends, this year, because of coronavirus, we will not be having our normal Twin Cities camp meeting. Even Central States was not planning to have a camp meeting this year. But thank God, Corona came, technology was activated. And beginning the 14th, June 14th through the 20th, beginning next Sunday, I should say, beginning next Sunday through next Sabbath, we will all be sitting at home and being blessed by a virtual camp meeting from Central States Conference. In the course of the week, I'll be sharing with you the program, and you should fit somewhere in there. And the goodness with these virtual camp meetings is you miss a program, you miss a sermon, you can always come back and find it in YouTube. So the whole of 14 through 20 of the month of June, Central States Conference will be having a virtual camp meeting for all its churches within our territory. So links will be shared. Please log in, share with your friends, invite family, and we will be blessed. The children department are planning a vacational Bible school in the month of August. And we are encouraging personal ministry teams to identify 2 weeks in September and October or October for our annual evangelistic meetings. Let me repeat, the children department are planning a vocational Bible school in the month of August, and we are encouraging personal ministries teams to identify 2 weeks in September and October for our annual evangelistic meetings. Now, what are we going to do? We have been thinking as elders, we have been thinking as boards, how better shall we serve you so that you continue being blessed while you are home. And so we have decided as boards, both in the United Central SDA Church and the Mountain Experience, that from 12th to 18th of July 2020, from 12th to 18th of July 2020, we shall have our high Sabbath week. We call it our spiritual extravaganza, or we can call it our virtual camp meeting. We have lined up programs for children, for pathfinders, for junior and young adults. We have also lined up speakers for our seniors. We shall have a team of health experts from New York led by Dr. Daly and his team of panelists to talk to us about health and health issues. Then Dr. Ketelo Mazibuko from South Africa will speak to families. We specifically chose a person who understands our background, and so who is African, who understands the African culture, who understands the challenges of families in the African context, and who is well-traveled, who has traveled the world to speak to families. And so Dr. Ketelo Mazibuko from South Africa will be speaking to families. And then we shall have 2 sermons a day by Dr. James Jansen from Boston. He will be our guest speaker, preaching twice a day. We shall also have Bible study. Man, that week is packed. That week will be a week of great spiritual revival and a great spiritual blessing. Whichever name you choose to call it. You can call it a revival week. You can call it a spiritual extravaganza week. You can call it a virtual camp meeting. What will be your responsibilities? What will be your responsibilities as a church member? Number 1, pray that God may bring moments of true revival among us during these weeks. In the month of June, in the month of July, as we move to the Vocational Bible School, as we move to September and October for our evangelistic series, may these months be months of spiritual revival within our churches. We will do our best to feed you. Your role will be to pray for us. Number 2, avail yourself. During this week, when we shall be having our virtual camp meeting, take a week off from work if you can, or some hours within a day so you may be able to benefit. We should be able to be rolling out a program on how the programs will run so that you can sketch yourself in a way that you will be able to attend. If not, buy some nice earphones. Buy some nice earphones. We will be on YouTube Live. Put the earphones as you work, wherever you are working, you will be listening to programs and benefit. Lastly, your role as a member, your role in supporting this work, your role in supporting this cause, after you have prayed, after you have availed yourself, after you have passed the word around by inviting your friends and relatives, by sharing the flyers and the links, then support the work with a minimum offering of at least $20 or more. At least $20 or more. What will this money do? Some of the speakers will come from Africa. And we have determined that we will ensure that where they are, they have a constant supply of Wi-Fi, so that when they are speaking, we are not interrupted. And so that money will buy them Wi-Fi for that week or for 2 weeks, whatever they will do, for those who will be speaking from Africa. But we are Africans, we are Christians, and it's our responsibility and our role to appreciate those who minister among us. And so we have a budget of $2,500 between United Central and the Mountain Experience. We need only 125 people who will give at least $20, at least $20. You can give 100. When you look around, when you look at your life, perhaps you were sick of coronavirus, the Lord healed you, other people died. Or perhaps you were not attacked, you were not sick. When you count your blessings and the things the Lord has done to you, you can say, God, you have been so gracious to me. I will join the cause. And how will you join the cause? Brother Sam Dubi, Brother David Osiemo, and the team that was selected, we should be putting names in your social media forums. The teams that were selected will be coming to you, will be calling you, will be texting you. Please respond positively so that this work can be supported, so that we are not stuck, so that as we work hard to prepare programs, as we work hard to ensure that you are fed spiritually, that you are also supporting the work from your end in big and small ways. May God bless you. May the gracious God be available to take care of you even as we minister today and as you think about these things and as you work to support them. Next, I will invite Pastor Kingoina to now come and take us through our next course of action. Pastor.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ricky, for remarks of what we intend to do a few weeks from now, so that people as they are at home, they should be able to be fed and instructed accordingly. Now, as we are home, the church is still active. I was passing through Coon Rapids. I saw a Lutheran church has advertised that the church is whom we are, not the building. I liked that. The church is whom we are, not the building. So the church is still active, even if we are not meeting here. So the church is still active. And we are whether you are at home or you are at work, the church is still there. So the offerings which land the church, the ministries of the church, is still our responsibility. I was looking in the book of Galatians, and this is what Paul says. I'm reading in Message Bible. It says, be very sure now, you who have been trained to self-sufficient maturity, that you enter into a generous common life with those who have trained you, sharing all good things that you have and experience. So Paul encourages the people of Galatia to give generously to the cause of Christ, no matter where you are. So the United Central, you know how you channel your offerings, your tithes and offerings. You know the systems, how they operate. And the TMA, you know how you give and what channels are available to you. So we seek that you are thankful and you give generously to the cause of God, even if we are under a lockdown. May God richly bless every one of you, TMA and the United Central, that you channel your offerings accordingly to your treasurers and your systems. Now we will pray so that we give you a chance to give your offerings wherever you are. Gracious Father, we are grateful to you. We are so thankful that you care for us. You provide for us. You give us good health. You give us energy. You give us skills in our minds and our hearts to enable us to work and earn a living. We pray those who are put out of work, we pray that as the economy opens up, you may open opportunities for those who are at home so they can find work, so can feed themselves and give a portion to the work of the gospel. Continue to bless us this day as we hear your word. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I can play ba-dum boom boom, ba-dum boom boom, ba-dum boom boom. Jesus loves you and me, ba-dum boom boom, ba-dum boom boom, ba-dum boom boom. Do you know the name of this? Yes, I know the name of that. It's a beautiful trumpet. I can play ba-dum bum bum, ba-dum bum bum. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Jesus loves you and me. Ba-dum-bum-bum, ba-dum-bum-bum, ba-dum-bum-bum. Do you know the name of this? Yes, I know the name of that. It's a beautiful flute. I can play Jesus loves you and me. Do you know the name of this? Yes, I know the name of that. It's a beautiful kayamba. I can play. Jesus loves you and me. Tin, 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 tin. Jesus loves you and me. Tin, 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 tin. Solatido, solatido. Jesus loves you and me. Solatido, solatido, solatido. Boom, 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 boom. Jesus loves you and me. Boom, 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 boom. Ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Jesus loves you and me. Ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Jesus loves you and me. Jesus loves you and me.
This is a moment for pastoral prayer, and pastoral prayer is normally an intercessory prayer for all the participants and members of our congregation. So wherever you are, we pray that you may be in the mood of prayer, that we may pray all of us together. So let's put our minds together for prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, today is your Sabbath day, and your children have gathered in their homes, which is unusual. Normally we should have been in the house of worship. Now we are scattered everywhere in our homes. We are grateful for the opportunity you have given us. Today now, as we put our heads together to pray, we thank you, loving Father, for you have provided for us. You have protected us. You have put an edge around us. That as we go to work, as we come home, you have protected us, that we have not been attacked by the virus which is around us. Many have not experienced the infection or the attack. We are grateful indeed. Some have been sick, but you have healed them. You have healed them, you have restored their health, and others are in the process of getting healed. We thank you for these gifts and your mercies. We have some of our friends who have rested from this infection. They have rested in death. And we trust that they were faithful to you, and as we lay them to rest, they will rest until resurrection morning, that when you will hand them a life of immortality with all of us. So we are grateful for whatever has happened. We praise you in death or in life. We are your children. And today, as we have gathered, we are grateful that you have protected many people have given their lives for you to protect those who are sick in hostels, in emergency places. Lord, you have been good. There are many people who have cared for people with the coronavirus, but you have protected them. We pray that you may continue to bless the research scientists as they seek for a medication which will help and protect your people from being attacked. Continue to bless them abundantly. All nations, as they struggle to find medication or cure for this disease, guide these scientists. They are your children, and this is your mission. We pray that soon it will be possible that we have medication for this virus. Today, we are also planning to hear your word. You have prepared your ministers everywhere. They are on the air. We pray that you may anoint them, touch their hearts, their minds, their lips, as they speak to us, that we may find words of help, words of encouragement, words of instructions, that we may be encouraged to live for you. In all our areas, you have cared for children. They are rocked at home. They are restless. You give them a peaceful rest. You have the parents are struggling to work, and children are working from home. You have been good to them. Rocked at home. The seniors are afraid even to walk outside because they don't know where this enemy comes from. We thank you for sustaining them and supplying all their needs. We pray that this day may be a blessing to us as we have gathered to worship you. Continue to bless us. In Jesus we pray. Amen.
Chukiana, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Kama unadanganya, wazingizia, kama wachukiana, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Kama unadanganya, wazingizia, kama wachukiana, wamsulubisha Bwana Yesu msalabani. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waushanye upende lujio, japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waushanye upende lujio, japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Kama una upendo, kama waombeana, kama wavumilia, washuhudia upendo wa Bwana Yesu. Kama una upendo, kama waombeana, kama wavumilia, tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu. Upendo wa Bwana Yesu waoshanye upende luji. Japo tuishi kwenye shida, tudumishe upendo huu.
Okay. Now, this a moment we want to hear the word of God for today, and it's my pleasure and my privilege to invite the pastor, Pastor Rick Nyaveri, who is the district pastor of United Central and the Mountain Experience. He has been giving messages from the United Central to all of us. And if you listen carefully, you will be richly be blessed. Nyaveri is a dynamic preacher, and he takes the word of God seriously. So if you listen, you will richly be blessed. I invite Pastor to the pulpit.
Happy Sabbath, saints. Happy Sabbath once again. Smile wherever you are. God has been good. God has been gracious. We have suffered a terrible week of riots and demonstrations and anger and frustration. We have prayed. We have asked why. Our children have asked us hard questions. But here we are. In India, they had a song which they used to sing during the struggle. And I think the Black American Negro Spiritual also sings that song. It says, "We shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday. This I believe deep in my heart. We shall overcome someday." Yes, we shall overcome someday. I welcome you to today's service, Pastor Kingoina. Thank you so much for accepting to serve as the lead elder from the Mountain Experience today. and this month he is the elder on duty. Apart from last week, where I broke from my regular talks, I have been doing a series on shepherding your family. Shepherd your family. And today, I want to preach a difficult sermon. A sermon that I want you to pray for me because I have struggled with it the whole week. I have asked God whether do I go ahead and preach about this. It's difficult. It's hard. But the Lord kept telling me by blocking every other scripture and every other avenue and pointing me clearly to this message. It is God's word for singles. God's word for singles. And I want us to read, even as we go along, from our focus will be 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 through 9. Of course, you know I am not going to read verse 1 through 9. I want you to read it yourself because it has some classified information. And so I want you to read it, to read that classified information by yourself. But that is the scripture where I want to base my study this morning. But allow me to read verse 6 through 9, and then as we go along, I'll be reading other scriptures. It says, I say this as a concession. Let me read verse 1. Now, regarding the question you asked in your letter, yes, it is good to abstain from sexual relations. That is verse 1. But because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, blah, blah, blah. You can continue reading. Then verse 6, it says, I say this as a concession, not as a command. But I wish everyone was single, just as I am. Yet each person has a special gift from God of one kind or another. So I say to those who aren't married, and to widows, it is better to stay unmarried just as I am. But if they can't control themselves, they should go ahead and marry. It is better to marry than to burn with lust. God's word for singles. We will be going back to those verses, but I also want you to go and read. And I will be reading along with you verse 25 through 40. Verse 25 through 40. You know, I read a text message. My wife told me, adjust your tie. So Mike, is my tie adjusted? My wife will beat me when I go back home. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me give you some statistics. Singles are a swiftly growing portion of our society. 42% of all households in the U.S. are headed by single adults. The singles population increased from 4 million in 1950 to 19 million in 1982. It could be more. I couldn't get the current statistics. But in 1982, there were 19 million. The last census, before the ones that we are doing, it was noted that 39.9, over 40, almost 40 million people are singles over the age of 18 and have never been married. 40 million people. That is in the US only. When you add to this the fact that 50% of all currently single women have been previously married, and that 50% of all marriages will eventually end in divorce or separation, you begin to see that those who are single comprise a significant portion of our society and population. You can see that there is a whole bunch of people who are not living the married life. There used to be a time when people who reached their adult years and still remained single were looked down upon and considered inferior to others. However, that perception has begun to change. Many are making a conscious decision themselves to remain single. They have a special place in the kingdom of God. Friends, singles have a special place in the kingdom of God, and there is a special word here for them this morning. This passage speaks only to marriage or those who are widows or widowers. So let's dive in and see what God's word is for singles. Let me tell you a little story about John Wesley, a 32-year-old missionary in Georgia. He fell in love with a beautiful 18-year-old girl. He was torn between being committed to celibacy or marrying this girl. So as he sat there worried, a friend suggested to him, why don't you draw lots? Maybe they will help you discern God's will. So Wesley agreed. So on a slip of paper, the friend wrote, on one paper, marry. On another, think not about marriage for 1 year. And on another, he wrote, think of it no more. Wesley closed his eyes and he drew the lots and he picked one paper, he opened it and he read, think of it no more. The young woman married another man and Wesley was heartbroken. 15 years later, Wesley married a wealthy widow, but the marriage was a disaster. He admitted later that he did not marry for happiness because he did not find it. He was gone too far in years, and he himself wasn't an easy man to live with. Eventually his wife died, and he only came to learn about the death of his wife long after she had been buried. I would like to offer some practical advice to singles based on Paul's advice on 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Paul was writing to a Corinthian society in a pagan, sex-saturated society. There were problems with immorality even among the Corinthian church. So in reaction to this form of sensuality, in reaction to this form of culture, some people within the church were beginning to say it is fashionable, it is okay, it is truly spiritual to remain unmarried. And even some who were married concluded that it was more spiritual to abstain from sexual relations within the marriage. So Paul is addressing these two concerns and some other problems. But I want to tell you that I cannot be able to deal with all these in one sermon, and I don't intend to. But I want to say that singles should pursue a path that leads to the greatest devotion to Christ and his cause. That the principle applies to every Christian. To every Christian, single or married, every Christian should ask, how can I best seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness? But it is especially Paul's word to singles that I want to offer you some 3 suggestions. Suggestion number 1, if you choose to remain single, if you can remain single and be devoted to the Lord in purity, stay that way. Stay single. That is what Paul is saying. That if you can remain single and be devoted to the Lord in purity, stay single. You know, while marriage is God's plan for most people, he has gifted some to remain single so that they can serve him without the encompasses that necessarily go along with marriage. When Paul says it is good for a man not to touch a woman in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 1, he is using the word touch as a figure of speech that uses the physical relationship in marriage to represent marriage as a whole. Thus he means it is good to remain single. He restates the same idea in verse 7 and 9. And discussed it at length in verse 25 through 40. He is not commanding being single, since he recognizes the single state as a gift which God only gives to some and not to everybody. But he is strongly commending it, since it is a gift he himself had, and since it provides a number of advantages for serving the Lord than being married precludes. So this probably needs to be said more often. Many Christians like to put pressure on singles. It is sometimes careless to hear careless statements from people who come to you or who whisper as single young people or single elderly people pass by. I wonder what is wrong with him. I wonder what is wrong with her, that he is not married. He seems like a nice person. It is easy. There's a book I have written, Worth the Wait, and that book should be coming out of the press in the next few weeks. It is easy, in that book I discuss, it is easy to find people approaching singles and making suggestive remarks without really knowing why somebody is single or why somebody has decided to remain so. They say he seems like a nice person, but Paul teaches that being single is not necessarily bad. He says, in fact, being single is good if a person is gifted for it, since it opens opportunities for serving Christ that are closed to married people. To say this is not to depreciate marriage. Paul and other biblical writers esteem marriage as God's gift, and they talk of it highly. But it is just how God has gifted a person. So if God has gifted you with the gift of being single, it is good to remain single. What are some of the advantages that singles have? There are at least 4. Number 1, singles have more freedom in difficult times. Singles have more freedom in difficult times. Interpreters differ. And so I cannot be dogmatic myself, but I think that Paul sensed an impending time of persecution for the church at Corinth. And so in verse 26, you hear Paul say the following words in verse 26. He says, because of the present crisis, I think it is better to remain as you are. So in such times, it is easier to remain unmarried. Paul is quick to add in verse 28. He's quick to add in verse 28. But if you do get married, it is not a sin. And if a young woman gets married, it is not a sin. However, those who get married at this time will have troubles. And I am trying to spare you from those problems. You see, Paul is not addressing a universal problem. Paul is addressing a local challenge that the church at Corinth was anticipating, and he's advising young people, you rather not get married. He's advising those who are single to remain that way, because it is easier to be killed alone, to be persecuted alone, than to watch your own children being persecuted with you. It is one thing to be imprisoned or martyred because of your faith as a single person, but it is much more difficult for both of you, your family, your children, if you are married. So in a situation where persecution is likely, being single means that you have more freedom than if you had a family. So in the same vein, singles have more flexibility to go to difficult places and plant churches. Especially those who have sensed the call of God to go and minister. And the ministry sometimes can be difficult. Ministry sometimes can separate you from your family. Ministry sometimes can take you to far lands. Then Paul says, if you are going to difficult places for purposes of being a minister or a servant of God, and you are not able to go with your family, you will have more flexibility if you remain single for the purposes of the gospel. Advantage number three, singles have more freedom to devote themselves fully to God and to his service. That's what he says in verse 32 through 35 of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 32 through 35. It says, I want you to be free from the concerns of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how to please him. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibilities and how to please his wife. His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord and holy in body and in spirit, but a married woman has to think about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband. I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you to serve the Lord best with a few distractions as possible. What Paul is saying is that marriage carries with it certain responsibilities. These responsibilities take time and effort. Otherwise could have been given to the Lord. Of course, both married and single people can be fully devoted to the Lord. But Paul's point is that if a single person gives himself or herself fully to the Lord and to his service, and a married person does the same, the single person can do more, since he does not have the family obligations that married people have. So I'm not calling you not to get married. I'm simply stating the advantages of being single, especially if you are talented and that is the gift that God has given you. Lastly, singles have more freedom to give sacrificially to the Lord, the Lord's work. You know, raising a family is expensive. We were discussing the other day with my wife, how many children should we have now that James is growing old? And the question keeps lingering in our mind that, you know, raising a child in America is expensive. While many married couples give generously to the Lord's work, and we say amen, they cannot give as much as a single person who is fully devoted to the work of God can do to the Great Commission. You know, a single person doesn't have to worry about buying a home, a large home. They don't have to worry about paying for a lot of food, clothes, medical bills, and all those stuff, education for the children and rearing a family, all these requirements. A single person has only himself or herself to provide for. And therefore, this frees them to be philanthropic, to support others, and to support the cause of work. Perhaps you are thinking, Pastor, if being single is that attractive, why don't you say everybody remain single? Paul says in verse 7 that remaining single is a special gift from God. While he wishes that everyone had that gift, he recognizes that that is not true. And from this chapter, we also learn that being married has some 4 advantages. I want to run them through quickly before I go back to what I wanted to tell the singles, and then we will be done. Number 1, Marriage provides a God-given outlet for sexual desires. Paul is very practical and realistic when he says, because of immoralities, each man is to have his own wife, and each woman is to have his own husband. Friends, let me say as humbly as I can say, if you are remaining single so that your business is to snatch other people's husbands, is to snatch other people's wives, is to run around with young girls and young boys, then you have no business being single. That is what the Bible is saying. That is what Paul is trying to say. That because you cannot control yourself, because you are lacking self-control, go ahead and get married. Let them marry. That is what he says. For it is better to marry than to burn with desires. If you are single and find that frightening sexual temptation is a constant battle, then you probably don't have the gift of being single. You need to pursue marriage. Paul is not saying that it is impossible for a single person to resist temptation, so that anybody can begin saying, Pastor, so you are accusing all single people as being immoral. No, that is not what the Bible teaches. Because in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, and I want you to read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, the Bible says, the temptations in your life are not different from others' experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so you can be able to endure. Paul is not saying that it is impossible for a single person to resist temptation, because he says in 1 Corinthians 10:13 that in every temptation God will provide a way of escape. Every Christian can be pure in thought and deed. What the gospel does to us, my dear brothers and sisters, it makes us to have pure thoughts. It makes us to have pure deeds, so that we are able to live a different lifestyle, a lifestyle that has self-control as a gift of the Holy Spirit, a lifestyle that is a lifestyle of purity, a lifestyle of love within the marriage context. That is why Paul is saying, but if fighting the battle for purity is consuming you, the best solution is not more self-control. It is not more pretense that you can manage it. The best solution, get a wife, get a husband. Of course, temptations do not end with marriage. I know there are so many married people who are immoral, who are amorous, who are living a life of promiscuity. I know that happens. I know there are many women who are immoral, who have husbands. But you still need self-control even in your marriage, because self-control is a gift of the Holy Spirit. And those who have allowed the Holy Spirit into their lives, then this is one of the gifts that will begin to grow in them. That as a young person, you will have self-control, praying and bidding for God's time as you wait, remaining single, telling God, I will follow your ways. Give me the way of escape when temptations come, so that this self-control as a gift of the Holy Spirit guides you along the way. So God has given marriage as a legitimate solution for inability to control our bodies. Number 2, marriage provides companionship to relieve loneliness. Here, I'm going back to Genesis, where Adam was in a perfect environment. He had everything, had an unbroken relationship with the Creator, and yet God Himself walks to him and says, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helpmate suitable for him. If as a single you can reasonably control your loneliness, through Christian fellowship, through other meaningful activities, then remain single. Remain single. You know, when I was single and in my mid-20s, my uncle gave me a book titled Single and Satisfied. I do not remember reading that book. I know he meant well. Why? Because I was single and unsatisfied. I was lonely. Therefore, I never read that book, but I kept praying that God will give me a spouse to take care of my loneliness. And lo and behold, my friend Victoria came along, and here we are. God has blessed us. And so, marriage provides companionship to relieve loneliness. Number 3, marriage is the God-given context to raise up godly children. Children need the influence and example of godly, loving mother and father, so that they will grow up to know love and to serve the Lord. Even when I was single, I loved the kids and wanted kids of my own. Now I tell you something, my dear brothers and sisters. If you cannot be able to remain single, get married. Raise up godly children. That is another ministry. The ministry of populating the world, at the same time, the ministry of raising a generation of people who love the Lord, and who will serve the Lord. Finally, number 4, marriage and children provide opportunities for witness to those without Christ. Of course, singles have opportunities for witness that married couples don't. But as we have seen, marriage is to be a picture of Christ and the church. As the world sees a husband's gentle, Christ-like love for his wife and the kind loving way they deal with their children, they become a witness for Christ. If you marry, it should not be for self-centered fulfillment. The idea of getting married and settling down in Maple Grove somewhere with your nice home, with your 2 cars, with a good job, weekend recreational hobbies, and of course a church for the weekends when you are not doing something else, that is worldly. While marriage and children are good gifts from God that bring great joy and happiness, you should marry because you can better serve Christ in line with your spiritual gifts as a married person. All Christians are to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. If you get married to seek first your own happiness, you will come up empty. Matthew 16, verse 25. So the next point that I want us to think about, if you are not gifted for celibacy, pray and look for a godly spouse. That is what he says in verse 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 9. Listen to what he says. But if they can't control themselves, then let them marry. Those 3 words, let them marry. You know, these words often frustrated me. It makes it sound so simple. But how do you go about marrying? Paul simply says, if you cannot control yourself, go marry. How is that a possibility even? Is it something that you walk to a supermarket or some club or somewhere and get yourself a spouse? I don't have a specific chapter or verse for everything I am about to say. But along with the Apostle Paul, in verse 25, I want to give my opinion as one who, by the mercy of the Lord, is trustworthy. One, by the mercy of God, is trustworthy. I have 5 suggestions for those who are single. Suggestion number 1, focus on personal growth in godliness. Focus on personal growth in godliness. You know, you can use your time as a single person to sit around feeling depressed and lonely. or you can fill your time with being around people. But I am suggesting that you use some of your alone time to seek the Lord in His Word and in prayer. If you use your time to read and study the Word of God, to pray, to read godly Christian books, and to serve the Lord in some capacity, when God introduces you to a life partner, you will be mature enough to take up responsibilities of Christian marriage. If you want a godly mate, you've got to become a kind of person you want to marry, namely a godly person. Point number 2, never ever consider marriage to a non-believer. You know, being single and you are not able to control yourself, or you desire to be married, that is a good thing you are doing. But it is not a good idea simply to walk into the marketplace of men and women and pick anybody. God has created somebody for you, somebody who will be a helpmate for you, somebody who will support your aspiration, somebody who will help you grow, somebody who will take you together with them to the heavenly kingdom, my brother and sister. And therefore, never consider marrying unbeliever. 1 Corinthians 7:39 says, 1 Corinthians 7:39 says, a wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. If her husband dies, she is free to marry, therefore, anyone she wishes, but only if he loves the Lord. That's what the Bible says. You are free to marry anyone you love, as long as that person you love loves the Lord. Let me read 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 6. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 6. Chapter 6, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 through 18. I want you to listen, the people of God. Don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be partner with wickedness? How can light live with darkness? What harmony can there be between Christ and the devil? How can a believer be a partner with an unbeliever? And what union can there be between God's temple and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will live in them and among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, for some reason, it is usually Christian women who get tangled with nice guys. They always call them nice. They say, but Pastor, he is a nice guy. He is a nice guy. Everybody is nice in this life. Let me tell you, my young people, everybody is nice. Everybody is nice. Even me, I am nice, but you don't know me. Even you are nice, but I do not know you. Look. Unbelieving men, unbelieving women are out of bounds. I don't care how nice he is. I don't care how nice she is. I don't care how round and whether she is shaped like a Coca-Cola bottle. I don't care. As long as she does not know God, as long as he does not care about the things of God, keep away from such. That is the word of God. Now some people will say, Pastor, I already married somebody who is not an unbeliever. Fine, deal with it. Pray about it. Keep talking about it. Keep encouraging one another. It is hard work, I know. But if you go ahead and disregard this advice, rarely will you make it. Your marriage will be miserable. Your children will suffer. Your devotion to God will be hindered. Don't do it. Don't do it. Number 3, guard your moral purity. Guard your moral purity. as Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 6:18, he says, flee immorality. Flee immorality. Your body belongs to God, whose spirit dwells in you. Therefore, you are to glorify God in your body. That is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6:16, that even if a man gets involved with a harlot, he becomes one in flesh with her. Having sex is more than just a physical union, physical intimacy. Even in a so-called the one-time opportunities create the illusion of personal intimacy. It clouds and confuses the real issues that need to be the foundation of a Christian marriage. It creates guilt. It carries the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. It defiles you and your brother or sister in Christ, as Paul states in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 15, chapter 5 verse 1 to 5. The sexual relationship is proper only and only in marriage. Only and only in marriage. Number 4, study godly characters. I'm speaking to the singles. Study godly character qualities that you will know, so that you will know what you are looking for. You know, if you need to shop for a new car, you will probably do some research about that car, how the engine runs, the longevity of that car, how to change the oil, what, you know, you will do some research so that you will not spend some money on a lemon. And yet many Christian singles never give any thought to what qualities they are looking for in a godly mate. You know, as a pastor, I am also a marriage counselor. And I meet a lot of challenges when I am counseling people who are already married, but who never took time to prepare themselves for marriage by looking past attractions. You know, most young people, they look at a girl, she looks nice, she looks like a mango, she looks like a tomato, she's shaped like an avocado, then you will begin to imagine that she's gonna be sweet and nice. No, there is more than that. There is more than that. There is more than that. There are qualities to look for in a man. Not the muscles only, not the mochos. You know, there are girls who are imagining that if I get a man who has a stamina, who does like this, and these muscles do like this, I'll be happy. A man who is cool, who has his hair cut like this, who is walking like this, who is twanging like this. I have seen girls end up married to abuseful men because they were looking for a mature, good-looking gay, not a man of God. If a man doesn't treat you with respect, gentleness, and self-sacrificial love, and other godly traits, don't marry him. You are not going to transform him. You are not the Holy Spirit. If Sisi was born until now he is 26, he has never been transformed, what makes you think that because you are going to marry him? Let me tell you, young people, love is not a feeling that you feel when you are about to feel a feeling that you have never felt before. Love is a relationship. Love is a commitment. So whenever you want to commit yourself to somebody's life, even though you are single, it is better to remain single than to get bad qualities into your life and bad genes into your life, because they will hurt you and hurt your life. So what are you going to do? Study the deeds of the flesh. Know what are the deeds of the flesh. Once you know what the deeds of the flesh are, you will know traits to avoid in a mate. What else should you do? Study the fruit of the Spirit so that you know which qualities to look for. The qualities like gentleness, the qualities like self-control, those qualities to look for. In the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 19 to 23, will give you
the deeds of the evil spirit and the deeds of the Holy Spirit. You look at those qualities, they will guide you to a kind of person who fears God and who is committed. And both of you, once you are committed to God and then you are committed to growing in godliness. Lastly, number 5, be wise, not super spiritual. Be wise and not super spiritual. By this I mean, God expects you to pray and wait on him, but he also expects you to use appropriate means to get a mate for yourself. He is not going to rain manna in form of a mate to you from heaven. There is a work you must do. As you pray, there is something you must do. He expects us to plow our field and to plant our seeds, even as he waters them and grows them. So there is nothing wrong with putting yourself in situations where you will meet godly men and godly women and godly mates. This includes involving yourself in a church college group or a campus ministry, attending a conference for Christian singles, or carefully using, I use the word carefully using a Christian online dating service. I'm not saying that looking for a mate should be your only reason for going to a church college group, but it can be a reason also. God is not going to rain manna. You must also dress yourself nicely if you are a woman. You must also talk nicely. You know, there are people who have missed opportunities to end their singleness, not that they talk carelessly. They carry themselves carelessly. Keep talking and saying, this girl, this man, this boy, they don't talk blessings on your life. And because of that, you are missing opportunities that God is placing before you. So if you can be devoted to the Lord, do it. If you are not gifted for celibacy, pray. I want you to remember point number 3. Marriage is not a final solution to your problems. God is. Hallelujah. Marriage is not a final solution to your problems. God is. So it's not something that you will say, I want to get married and all my problems will end. There are people who have been married on day 1, they thought they married a lemon. Marriage is a wonderful, or an onion rather. They married day 1 like this and they discover they married an onion. All their life is crying. Marriage is a wonderful gift from God. As Proverbs 31:10-12 says, an excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far more above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not even the days of her life. Amen. Next to Jesus, Victoria is the best gift God has given me, and my children are right behind. But at the same time, if God is not at the center of your life and your mate's life, marriage will create problems and trouble. So if you are single, don't simply take yourself that I must get married, I must get anybody. Some mothers who are wise will tell you, you better stay here, my daughter. You better be here. No, this is your room. Nobody's chasing you. Be here. Because sometimes you can entangle yourself with a man who will be an onion of tears in your life for the rest of your life. Look for God. Once you have God, whether you are married or you are not married, you are good to go. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Allow me to spend some 3 minutes to talk to single parents very briefly. Single parents are amazing. They are superheroes who are balancing life, filling the gap, making ends meet, putting their needs aside, all for the heart-bursting love of their kids. They are strong, resilient, flexible, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Oh, wait. Single mothers, single parenting is not easy. Parenting solo is uniquely fulfilling while lonely and challenging all at once. So whether you choose it or not, single parenting can often feel like an uphill climb that some days feel insurmountable, leaving you exhausted and gasping for air through the tears of aching disappointments of this life. Many of us don't even realize that while we are parenting single, we fall into a sort of survival mode, doing whatever it takes just to get through a day. Just to get through a day. Just imagine. Some people are being supported by parents, the father is doing homework, the mother is cooking. But you have to come home, make sure the house is cleaned, make sure the homework is done, make sure the food is made, make sure the bed is done, and take care of discipline of the child, and still hope that that child will grow to be the best in the society. It is not easy. It is not easy. It is not easy. I recognize it is not easy. But I believe you can thrive. You can still thrive. And I want to encourage you that God is here to hold your hand and to make it successful for you. Don't feel despondent. Don't feel heartbroken. Don't cry all the time. God can help you, and He is here to do it. He is here to do it. Once you find Jesus, He will teach you how to live a life of worth. The Bible says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So as you honor God, He will help you be a better parent and shape you into a woman or man of honor, no longer discarded, worthless, and frightened of the future. These are not steps or a checklist, but a few habits the Holy Spirit placed in my heart that I wish to share with you. There are just 4, and I will run through them very quickly. Number 1, have a habit of reading God's word and praying for yourself and your child. Read God's word and pray for yourself and your child. You know, my dear sister, my dear brother, there's a way God works with those who trust Him. There's a way God never forsakes those who cry to Him. So as a single parent, for whatever reason you became single and you have children or a child you are parenting, pray. Seek God on your behalf. Seek God on your behalf. Seek God on behalf of your child. Seek God on your behalf of your children. Each day, discover the words of God. They will give you, discover that God is good, that God is sovereign, that God is loving, that God is forgiving, that God is a mighty sustainer. Each day, discover these living words. Let them breathe peace and life and wisdom into your spirit, showing you the trustworthiness of God and leading you to seek His will over your own. That is the key to single parenting. Number 2, have a reason in the season, or should I say, don't waste the season. You know, single is a season of life. We were all single at some point, and we have a potential of being single someday. Hello? We were all single at some point, and we have a potential of being single someday. So nobody should look down upon any single person and make some disparaging remarks and say they didn't take care of themselves, they were moras, this and this happened. That is being careless because there's nothing you know. Let me tell you, you have a potential of being single. Your husband can walk away today and you will never see him. Your wife can walk away today and you will never see her. Your wife can make you sign divorce papers today. You have a potential of being single. And so being single or being a single parent, it's a season of life. Like most seasons in life, these two has a beginning and an end. It may take you a while to grasp, because maybe you are so focused on getting through each day that you miss the opportunity to enjoy this unique season. True, not knowing when it might end can be sapping, because you are not able to see the end. You are focused on the season of waiting and the difficulties in waiting. But I want to challenge you not to look to the end of your singleness as the goal, but rather what God is going to show you and how He wants you to grow while you are single. The truth is, there are books you can write or read when you are single, and you will never be able to read or write them when you are married. The truth is, single people have more free time, more flexibility, more opportunity to deepen friendship and serve God in ways that may be harder for married persons to do. The lesson word God wants you to use this season of your life to equip you for the next season. Step into the opportunities that God may open up to you. Ask God how you can make the most of this season. Then trust Him. He will show you how. Number 3, let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. You know, we are sentimental beings. That can be such a sweet and endearing quality to be sentimental. But if you are like me, sentimental to a fault, it can hinder you from moving on and getting in the way of your spiritual growth. God is prompting you to clean out certain things from within your environment so that you can be free. We don't often acknowledge it, but things that hold memories can often hold us stuck in the same old woe me circle of poor decisions, unhelpful thought patterns, and unhealthy habits. Things that belonged to your ex should not be hanging around you. And when you look at them, memories keep flowing, feelings keep coming out of you, they keep flooding into your life. Things like pictures, things like mementos, things like favorite movies or books may keep you in an emotional rat race. Clean them up. Hallelujah. Clean them up. God is prompting you to get rid of some things from your past that you are holding onto, because then they will free your heart to begin enjoying life. You know, there are people, even when they are married, they keep comparing their married partners to their ex. How crazy can you be? People are never the same. There are people who when they are courting, they keep comparing themselves, their partners, their mates, to that man. You begin saying, he doesn't buy me chocolate like my ex used to buy me chocolate. He'd rather give you he'd rather give you nothing but be a man or a woman. So keep out all those memories, all those pictures. You go back to your room, the picture of that man is still hanging there. The picture of that woman is still hanging there. And you have a new woman in your life. How can you be free? Let go. Maybe they are simply objects, but you also know that is best for you includes letting go of things like unforgiveness, ungodly relationships, and realistic expectations, hopes for the way it could have been. There are people who are fantasizing. If I had married that man, whenever you see him drive to church, you start crying. If I had married that man, if I had married that woman, let go, let go, let go, because he is now with somebody else. He is now with somebody else. Take out those pictures. Forgive him if he messed you, so that you can be free, so that you can smile again, so that you can flourish again, so that you can enjoy life again, so that you can get a man or a woman and live your life. That is what God wants about you. Lastly, write it down. Write it down. It might seem obvious or maybe unnecessary, depending on your opinion of journaling, but I want you to hear me out. I read recently that the Christian life thrives both on memory and hope. Remember how God has shown you mercy in the past. Look forward with hope to how our compassionate, faithful, promise-keeping God will answer your prayers in the future. The thing about humans is that we are fickle and we have a very short memory. These traits can conspire against us to make us ungrateful and short-sighted. It is good discipline to journal, to take a look back and recount the blessing of God in our lives. The answers to prayer, even those answers we don't like at the time, have a way of coming back to our memory and confirming to us that the Lord does indeed always look for our best. God is writing a wondrous story about you. He is always at work. Even when you feel your prayers are not answered, even when you feel you are hard pressed in your singleness, God is writing a story. Remain faithful to Him. You are an unfinished work. You never know what He intends to do in your life. Write those things down. As you cry, write it down. As you hope, write it down. Write down how He led you in the past. Write down how He's leading you in the present. Write down. Bible says, I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Tell yourself that promise of Psalms 27, 13 and 14, that I believe I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. May God bless you in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to pray. I want to pray for you. I want to pray especially for those who are single. God, in your waiting period, He will help you to remain faithful. Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, this is your word, and you have let me speak. At the beginning of this week, I felt like telling you, no, I don't want to preach this word, God. But you insisted. You blocked every other scripture from my sight, and you ensured that I focused only on this. And I have agonized. I have struggled. But Lord, you have given me the message, and I have faithfully passed it to your people. I pray that it will encourage them. Pray that it will enlighten them. I pray that those who are single will find hope to smile again. I pray that those of us who are not single, who are married, will find ways to support these people and not to talk carelessly about them or to think carelessly about them. We never understand what they are going through. Maybe it is your calling that they are how they are. Maybe it is because of a certain unfortunate incident that happened in their lives that they are what they are. Maybe it's a personal choice. Maybe it's a calling. We have no duty meddling upon the businesses of others. Maybe you still want them to continue waiting because you are arriving soon with somebody better for their lives. I just want to pray, oh God, that they will stay steady in their faith, knowing that whatever responsibilities you have called them to be, whether to remain single and unmarried, whether to remain single parents, whether to marry someday, whatever it is, let them wait upon you, because your word says, be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait on the Lord. I say, wait on the Lord. Give them faith, give them favor, show them the way, guide them, oh Lord. Give them wisdom on how to do parenting and to live their lives for your glory. And help them to support your work. Give them opportunities, open ways for them. They are your children. And we who are married, let us always be reminded with the fact that we are only married for a season, and we have a potential of being single any minute, so that we remain grateful for this state you have placed us for your glory. We have a camp meeting coming up, oh God, to bless your children. And I want to pray that your grace will be sufficient. As we plan, as we prepare, be here for us to bless us and to guide us. We pray in the mighty name of Jesus. Heal your people, God, those who are sick. Stretch your hand and touch those who are bereaved. Comfort those who are crying. Be with those who are suffering. Be with your children, oh God, wherever they are. May your grace be sufficient. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Next week, I will be speaking to college-going students. Still on the series on Shepherd Your Family. Be speaking to college-going students, and God has a word for you. Look to that next week. Perhaps we will not be here. Maybe I'll speak from home because we want to let this church remain closed for the next 2 weeks after the service that will happen here on Friday. But I will be speaking to you about how you can make it through college. And I'm sure you'll be blessed a great deal. God bless you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah.